Feels good. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Junior Lopez, and I'm the music director of the Young Artists Orchestra. I'd like to welcome you to the masterclass with Daniel Haas. Daniel is a dear friend who has, I think, appeared with YAO on 2 occasions now, and we'll probably have another one very soon. He's one of my favorite collaborators. I first met Daniel when he was, I think, 12 or 13 at the Royal Conservatory. And we've kept in touch ever since. I'm a big fan of his, so I've invited him to be a part of our Virtua initiative. These are programs running throughout May. Basically, since we couldn't finish our concert season, we're substituting them with master classes, seminars, talks, things to keep our students busy. And this is one of those programs. This is the masterclass with Daniel Haas. So I won't take any more of your time. Please welcome Daniel and our first performer, Angel Scotch.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Thanks, Junior, for having me. Just wanted to say hi and say that I hope everybody is safe wherever they are and staying active and all of that. I'm here in my parents' basement in Toronto, have been for the past couple of months, you know, just doing what I can, teaching online, practicing, of course, and, you know, doing what I can to stay active and all of that. So anyway, just wanted to say a few words, and now I give the stage to our first performer.
All right. Hello, I'm Angel. I'm going to be playing a movement from the Bach Cello Suite Number 2, the Minuets 1 and 2. I'll begin.
All right. Okay. Bravo. First of all, really beautiful playing. It's Angel,
Thank
right?
you. Yes.
Okay, so really very, very impressive playing. This is an extremely difficult movement, truly.
Thank you.
And I especially want to commend you for the rhythmic sense that you bring to this piece. Now, I'm sure a lot of you know the Bach suites are in 6 movements. The first one is a prelude, which is sort of sets the stage in terms of character and mood for the suite. And then the 5 movements that follow are all based on different dances from the period that Bach was writing in, from different regions of Europe. So Bach wrote these in around 1720. There isn't an exact date because there's actually not a copy of his manuscript. There's only one that was transcribed by his wife Anna Magdalena. So all that to say is that this minuet that you just played, both minuets, right? There's in all the suites what we call the gallantries, which is this 5th movement before the final jig. They come in pairs, so it's either 2 gavottes, 2 minuets, or 2 bourrées. This suite has the minuets, and it's very much a very traditional 3/4 dance, and you can I could very much feel it in your playing, and that's a very important thing that I just want you to kind of be very conscious of when you work on all the other movements as well, because your rhythm is very good. There's an element of sort of a dancey feel that you get from that sort of pretty consistent rhythm that you are playing consistently, but I think you can allow yourself to feel the sort of dance of it more, the sway of it. So that's to say that you were doing a very good job of that. I do want to talk with you briefly. I think it'll help a lot with getting that dancey feel, kind of more free and open expression of the dance quality. Is that I noticed, first of all, that you were using for pretty much the entire time a somewhat small amount of bow. You were kind of situated in this part of the bow, and you know what? That's fine. And it doesn't get too in the way of the music, and you were doing obviously a fantastic job with the notes and all of that. But I do think that there's a lot of potential for you to explore faster, more kind of a swing to the bow. That, as you can kind of imagine, that swing of the right arm can in itself be a sort of dance that you're doing yourself, and that kind of creates in the string. Also, it'll help you pull the string out, as opposed to just kind of, we think of the string as we're just kind of activating it by moving the bow on top of it, but you can actually make it spin much further by that sort of perfect feeling between speed and resistance and the placement of the bow on the string. So I want you to try. I'm gonna demonstrate a little bit what I mean in terms of the swing of the bow and how that can loosen up the entire dynamic and rhythmic expression of this piece. So let me know, everybody, if you can't hear it as well when I play, because I'm trying to speak close to the microphone so you can hear me, but when I play it might be a little bit softer. So first of all, I'll just say that generally, this particular movement that you played, how would you describe the character of it? Is it sweet? Is it
It's, I feel like it's sort of like reminiscent. I mean, because it's like D minor, it's about death, generally.
okay, but I mean, in terms of that, first of all, you're playing all these big chords, right? So it has a certain sort of grandeur to it. It's not a like small, timid kind of movement, right? While maybe the prelude, which has a very kind of prayer-like quality, this movement is actually quite active, right? It's not a slow movement. It's not a you know, even though the suite as a whole is in D minor and might have a more somber character to it, there's got to be ups and downs throughout the different movements. That's kind of the point of having the different movements. For example, the courant, right, of this particular suite is quite intense and kind of impassioned, right? So I think this movement as well, the use of the bow will kind of help activate that intensity of it, that in D minor, even though it can be a very somber, it can also have a lot of passion to it. So just looking at a couple of for the first measures. So first of all, even this first chord, you know, one of my my greatest mentors, Ron Leonard, who was you know, an important teacher in the LA area for many years. He was a big, you know, every time I played for him, if I didn't use the whole bow, he would kind of go like this and say, well, you paid for the whole bow, right? So you got to use the whole bow. There's no point in, you know, playing any one piece unless it's specifically, you know, is like a piece you only play here, is specified by some contemporary composer or something. There's always going to be opportunity for you to use bow speed and use the entire bow. So just try with me once. Play that first chord, just the first chord. Yes, and try to get as much ring after the bow leaves the string. So it's not just about the ring you get while the bow is on the string. You see how it's ringing afterwards? That's what you want to get. That's kind of how you know that you're pulling the string. You're pulling the sound out of the string and making the string spin. Literally, if you look, you know, at the string, you can see how wide you can get it to fluctuate. You want it to have as much spin and as wide a range of motion. You know, you can practice this using open strings. Just play an open string and play kind of, you know, you can get a little closer to the bridge to get that resistance. Don't use too much pressure though, so you don't choke the string. And then look at the center of the string. You can see the string, you know, especially the low strings, C and G. You can see them you know, oscillating in a really just wide, like you wouldn't believe. They almost are touching the strings next to them. Actually, with the C string, well, not quite, but you can almost get the C string to hit the G string if you get it to move wide enough. So all that to say, like, when you play these chords, you want to get that ring that stays after the bow leaves the string.
Yeah.
And that means using bow speed, right? And even if the character is more quiet or something like that, you're still kind of giving some sort of a the movement of the bow has more intensity to it, even if it's small, even if it's quiet. You know,
I noticed
it
you
has
used
more life in it.
I
Sorry,
think
go
you
ahead.
used a really small amount of bow when you just did that, but
Right, but you see, there still was a lot of life in that one note, and that has to do
yeah,
with keeping that kind of. First of all, there's a certain circular element to the bow motion. It's not linear like this. It's not left to right. And if you think about it, you know, in a more general sense, 3/4 specifically as a meter. If you see a conductor, right? If you look at Junior when he's conducting in 3/4, there's kind of you're basically drawing this circle. And you did very well the sort of emphasis on one, right? Because each of the 3 beats has its own kind of purpose, right? It's 1, 2. The 2 is sort of a retreat. 2, 3, 1. So the 3 leads to the 1, right? Which the 3 is the one that is actually often forgotten. You think it's just 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, but it's not. It's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1. You see the difference and the inflection there.
yes.
So you can think about that even in those first couple of measures. You see that's like 2, 3, 1, 2. The 3 has a propelling quality to it, so it doesn't just get stuck on the 1. Anyway, I've been talking a lot. Try playing a little bit now, and just try to get more of that swing of the right arm to pull the string and get as much resonance out of the instrument, even if it's in soft dynamics. Get the instrument to just keep resonating after every note.
Okay.
Much better, much better, honestly. And you're already using more bow, and there's so much more life to the sound itself, because you didn't do anything different from like an interpretation point. You just kind of upped the ante in terms of the energy you put into each stroke, right?
Feels really good.
Right, it feels good because you feel like you are yourself dancing with it, right? It's not just like you're playing the notes in kind of a linear way, but there's just like you allow yourself to move with it more, propelled by the right arm. So that's something that you can, you know, that's that spin and ring to the string and to the sound is something that even if you're playing the softest, slowest thing in the world, you always want to be aware of what the string is doing under the bow. And, you know, that has to do with we talk about the sort of 3 variables of sound production, right? You've got the placement of the bow in relation to the bridge, you've got the speed of the bow, and you've got how much weight you put on the bow, right? And getting the best sound in any particular context always has to do with finding the right combination of the 3, right? So you want to find the right location and just enough. I like to think of the amount of weight you put into the string as being just enough to keep the bow kind of glued to the string and just enough to keep the string speaking. But then really it's more so than pushing down. You actually just use that amount of weight so that when you pull the string, literally pull and push, right? You're pulling this way. It keeps it enough glued so that because the string under the bow, if you think about it, the string is actually moving under the bow. So the bow wants to bounce off of the string, right? That's its natural response. So you want to get to that place where you can sense just enough pressure on the string so that the bow doesn't jump off, but also not more than that so that you don't lessen the range of how much the string can bounce around. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You have this image of like the string under the bow is vibrating, right? The string is kind of moving around, and you want to kind of always, and it's kind of an index finger thing, where you're always just kind of giving the bow just enough weight and pressure so that the string doesn't push it off, but you're not putting too much so that that crazy bounce of the string gets kind of smushed in there. Great.
Right.
Try playing it again. I do want to mention one more thing to you, and this is just kind of my 5 cents from a technical perspective. You know, there's infinite ways of holding the bow, and there's, you know, pros and cons to anything, but I think that, and this is something that I've learned from in my life, going through times when I was using kind of, this is something you do a little bit, you use this part of the hand, and these two fingers don't really do anything, right? The pinky is just kind of chilling over there. It's not really participating or kind of helping in any way. And for some things, that might be fine, maybe more kind of lyrical pieces. But especially for something like Bach, where you need to have this control of the bow, not only in a horizontal way, but in a vertical way, right? Because if you think about it, the articulations of this piece have as much to do with how you go in and out of the string vertically as they do about going left and right, right? Yum, yum, chida, di, tum, bum. Especially the shorter articulations. You really want to have this control of the bow that you just can't really have if your pinky is not involved. So just a concept to think about for you, if you think about what's actually holding the bow in like a very, you know, I don't want to get too scientific about it, but in terms of like geometry, you know, you can see that, first of all, you know, the thumb does offer a counter presence to the index finger, right? That's how we kind of get that torque of the bow to push it down. It's the thumb against the index finger, right?
Yeah.
But the pinky actually also offers this way a counter presence to the index finger, so that, again, I actually can't hold the bow without the pinky. It just doesn't work. So I want you to think about, I don't know if you can see, this triangle between the thumb, the pinky, and the index finger. The bow kind of being held by this very, very strong shape. The triangle is one of the strongest shapes in nature. And so try for a second to just hold it like this, just to feel, make sure, you know, you don't want to tense this muscle up, but just kind of seeing the possibility of this triangle, the pinky, the thumb, and the index finger. Yeah, really try. You see my pinky, first of all, my pinky is resting almost on top of the stick, right? Yeah, and you really want to engage that tip of the pinky, right? The rest of the finger doesn't really do much good in this case. So you want to feel, you know, I always talk with my students about feeling the fingertips of these 3 fingers on the bow. Try that once. Just hold the bow with your left hand so that you don't have to worry about the weight of it. And then just feel these three fingers, the fingertips of them on the bow. That contact is really important. It's the fingertips, exactly. Yeah, that looks much better. So that it's the tip of the pinky here gives you that really strong shape. Strong in the sense that because the shape itself is strong, then you don't have to work very hard. You see, it kind of gives you this efficiency so that your muscles don't get tensed up, right? The stronger the shape, the less you have to work. So just for you to think, because I did notice that your pinky wasn't really involved, which again is something that I went through myself. So it's very much a common thing, but it's just worth kind of bringing the pinky back into the equation, because it'll help you so much, first of all, with that swing, and with kind of the shorter articulations in this piece. See, if I'm not engaging my pinky, I have a lot less control vertically. But once the pinky is there, as a counter presence to the index finger, all of the staccato motions just are much easier to control. Anyway, try playing it one more time and get that swing. Think about your elbow also, kind of your elbow being, you can feel your elbow swinging up and down, kind of, you know, like this is kind of like a, I don't know, a pirate dance or something, but, you know, just feeling that entire arm as one thing, swinging on the string, freeing up all of this. Let yourself play it kind of loud. I mean, don't worry about being like forte or anything. Just let yourself make this really healthy sound with bow speed, and not just kind of I'm on the string and then I move. And also try to engage your pinky. It might take some practice, obviously, but just for right now.
Okay.
Yeah. Really nice.
Oh,
that was great. Keep going.
Okay.
Right, and so like these chords, each of them, if you practice the piece slowly, especially the last one, right? If you kind of keep the vibrato going here and the strings pressing, the fingers on the left hand pressing the string down, you'll surprise yourself with how long you can get those notes to ring after you release the bow. Try just those 3 chords kind of slowly. Try to use more bow speed. Don't worry about pressure. Just don't worry if it sounds kind of weird right now. Just free all that up.
Okay.
Good. You kind of you like stop when you get to the end of the bow. Kind of follow through with it. Think of that you're gonna just throw, like, you know, like your hand's gonna keep going in that direction forever. Yes.
Oops.
That is so much better. I'm telling you, if you practice through this movement slowly, this is a PSA for everybody. I mean, I'm sure you've been told this, but if you practice slowly, I promise you, you're going to get better in 5 minutes than you would in 5 months of just practicing everything quickly. Like, seriously, it's huge. Practicing slowly gives you the time to be intentional about what you're doing. So if you practice slowly through this, and each of those chords, right, just try to see how much ring you can give to them, then that will completely change the sound that you produce. in this movement and pretty much any Bach piece you play. Really quickly, we have to move on, but I just want to talk briefly in terms of Bach. I don't know if this is something you guys are exposed to, but there's just, in recent years, a big sort of resurgence of historical performance, meaning people playing on instruments that are more like what they were like at the time the pieces were written. So, for example, we play on metal strings, and like there's a particular way the cello is set up, which was kind of different back in the time of Bach. Not to say that you need to play on a historical instrument to play Bach. You can play it just as well on a modern instrument with more modern technique. But one thing that you can absolutely learn from watching a historical performance of this piece, first of all, in terms of the use of the bow, Baroque bows had this. If everybody kind of Googles, not right now or whenever in your spare time, Google what a Baroque bow looks like. It has a higher arch and it tapers at the end, and it's shorter too. That means that, these modern bows were designed for increased sustain, so that when you're at the tip, you have as much power as when you're at the frog. But these Baroque bows, because they have less sustain to them, it's all about bow speed and ring. Because if there's no ring, the sound will just die when you get to the tip of the bow. So you absolutely have to make every stroke of the bow count in terms of making the instrument ring. If you look up Baroque performances, people like Peter Wispelwey or Jean-Guy Keras, who's a great French cellist, you'll see how much bow they use and how much ring the instrument has. So as opposed to playing to what it's like when you play Brahms or Dvorak or something like that, where you kind of sustain the notes. And again, it's not like you have to go either way in any dramatic way. But when you play Bach, there is something to glean from seeing the way historical performance bows give you this ring to the sound that you can sort of emulate on the modern bow a little bit. And it is something that I was trying to go at today as well with you, Angel. So really great job. Practice slowly. Use your whole bow. Don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid of kind of letting loose with your body. It's the kind of thing that we sit and we practice for an hour and we kind of get, we kind of get stiff. We get sort of trying to nail everything correctly. It's always important not even after you practice, but anything you practice, if you practice something that's really difficult, something that's really slow, you always want to make sure that there's a flow in your body while you're doing it. I can speak from experience that if you practice something and you practice it really well, but you're not relaxed, you'll actually have a harder time playing it the next day, as opposed to if your sort of sole purpose or a big chunk of your attention is looking at or just kind of sensing the flow and relaxation in your body. It's a huge thing. Cellist, one of the greatest cellists of the 20th century, Janos Starker, you can see him play, it looks effortless. And he said that his entire life as a cellist was all about releasing smaller and smaller points of tension. So I just, this is something that's so beneficial for music making and for the technique itself, but also just for life. So I encourage everybody to kind of, when they play, think about, am I breathing in a kind of relaxed and steady way? If you feel like your breath gets kind of shallow, just take a minute, and this is, again, from my own experience, is something that's very beneficial, whatever it is you're playing, and especially if you're playing something that's a dance like this minuet. All right, great, bravo! Seriously, you sound really good, and just kind of let loose with your right arm, and your sound will it will change absolutely.
All right, that was great. Thank you.
Sure thing. Okay, next we have Chloe Wang.
Hi. So I'm going to play the Sasson Cello Concerto No. 1, first movement.
Sure. Great, Chloe. Sorry, I'm just going to stop you there because, you know, it sort of repeats after that. Really great job. You know, I know it's tough to play a piece like this without that accompaniment and, you know, like this online sort of, you know, in front of a screen. So I really appreciate your performance and that you know you put yourself out there like that. Your sound is really great, especially that's something that I noticed and that I really like. You've got a very nice, solid, powerful sound, and in a piece like this, you know, playing it with an orchestra is, you know, the concerto is kind of a medium where the soloist and the orchestra are kind of at odds with one another a little bit. In this piece, that's actually particularly apparent in the beginning, where the cello kind of interrupts on the second beat of the measure, right? Now, have you played this piece with piano ever?
Yeah.
You have. So, how does the piece start?
There's a chord and then I play.
Right? Big chord and then you play. Exactly. So, even though you're playing it alone right now, sorry, I'm breaking my back. Even though you're playing it alone right now, it's actually really important that at the beginning of this piece, you hear in your head that first chord. Because one thing I want to talk to you about, especially in the first part of this piece, sort of the opening, is the importance of rhythm, and not just counting. We think of rhythm as being numbers, but it's you're doing the numbers correctly, and it's important to know, you know, numbers. I mean, as in like how many beats in the measure and where in the measure and number-wise you are. But after you got that down, which you do, there's an entire world of how you can kind of feel internally this rhythm, because rhythm is also about time passing, right? You look at a clock and you see the seconds sort of pass in a very consistent way, and you can count those seconds, and it's the kind of thing where time is always passing in a consistent way, right? And when we play music, playing in time means playing with time, playing in a context of time passing, so that it's not just about counting the beats, but feeling where the beats are in relation to one another in sort of that passing of time. I know this sounds kind of abstract, but all I'm trying to say is that first note that you play has to be in the context rhythmically and feeling-wise, feeling as in like feeling time pass, in relation to that first chord from the piano or from the orchestra. So I just want you to play the opening one more time, and in any sort of physical way, I want to see how let's see. I want you first of all to play that first chord yourself. If it's an A minor chord, right? The piece is in A minor, and the orchestra plays yum, it's A minor, right? So you can just play a low A or something, okay? Just play it like a conductor is going yum. Good. So there's kind of a there's a breath before it, right? When, again, thinking about the conductor, the piece is like the tempo is this, right? If this is the quarter note, yum dum ba da ba da ba da ba da ba dum. Maybe they would give 2 quarter notes. I don't know. Junior, correct me if I'm wrong. Probably be something like that. 1. So especially that second one, the pickup, that's something that first of all you can feel with your breath. You can probably hear me doing it, you know, in sort of intuitive way, right? Generally that downbeat comes with an exhale. Try that once. Just go kind of think to yourself, and 1, as you play that, just play that chord again, and really play it like you would play it, you know, with a big orchestra, and feel that pickup, and even breathe with it. Good. So you did it. I could hear you doing it with your breath, which is great. And you kind of did it with your head and shoulders a little bit, right? Try doing it once with your bow, as if the bow is the conductor, right? If you've ever seen people playing concertos, which happens infrequently and more so in sort of classical pieces, without a conductor, then you can see that it's kind of, the orchestra is watching their bow. The bow is the real conductor of the piece, okay? So it's okay to do it with your sort of head and shoulders, but I want you to try it once doing it with the bow because I think it'll be more effective. Good, good. So again, kind of thinking about the swing of the bow that I was talking with Angel about, you can really let that pickup be as much of a, you know, if on that chord you use almost your whole bow, you can probably use more bow. I always, you know, so you can probably use more bow. Then the pickup can be as much movement as the release. Try it one more time, and just, you know, you can even start not, you know, you don't want to start where you're going to start, and then just kind of move from there. Start from where you're kind of like feeling the space around you, and then really, really try to create motion around it. Good. I still feel like your bow is actually just going like this, like up and down. Try to start over here as if you were at the tip, and almost like you're playing an entire bow before that downbeat, except that's going to be an air bow. And then the downbeat, you know, this is really just about, again, kind of releasing the motion of the piece. Motion, literally the motion we're creating with our bodies, right? Because we're making the music by moving, right? So the more you move with it, literally in space, the more energy the music will have. That's just like the nature of music, right? If you move this much, that's the amount of energy it's going to have. And that also relates to when you actually play the real cello part. And that has to do with feeling that first chord of the orchestra as well. So that two and then you see that the pickup has as much intention and energy to it as the actual note I'm playing. If I were to try starting just from the note, it's much, much harder. Again, I'm going to do it again. Right? As opposed to, right, there's just, it gives me, it makes it easier for me to really express that first note that I'm playing. Okay, so now try playing that first note, the E. And I want you, I want you with the bow and with your breath to really feel and really push yourself to move a lot. I know this sounds kind of weird to say, but the more you move, especially in an impassioned piece like this, I'm not saying kind of making a show of it or, you know, doing facial expressions and all that. I'm really just talking about utilizing the power that moving has to express. So, right, I'm exaggerating a little bit now, but, you know, you want to push yourself to that extreme. So try playing just that first note with as much just breath and kind of, you know, don't care kind of attitude and just go for it. You know, it's kind of like every note, especially the first note like this, there's nothing on the line. You have nothing to lose, right? Obviously, you know, it takes courage to play music, right? It takes courage to play music in front of people, and it takes courage to play music in front of a screen filled with people, right? But just for right now, try to forget about all of that and just, you know, even if it ends up sounding horrible, I'll congratulate you if it sounds horrible, okay? So don't worry about that. Just try to create as much momentum with your own hands, okay? Try it a couple times. Good. And you can use, and once you start playing the note, don't let the bow kind of just don't let the bow play on just how it's used to playing. In this kind of playing, you don't want there to be anything that's consistent. Actually, you don't want the motion of the bow to be consistent. You want it to always be doing something to propel the music forward. So really try to use the entire bow. First of all, don't stop moving until you've used the entire bow, excuse me, and just move it fast. Move it again. This piece it's one of the most famously passionate openings of any concerto, right? A concerto usually has like a tedious orchestral introduction where everybody's just waiting for the soloist to play, which of course kidding about, it's an important part, but all that to say that if you're playing Dvorak concerto, you do sit there and wait for 5 minutes for the orchestra to play throughout all the themes before you get to play your impassioned theme. This concerto, you start right away, right? It's the kind of piece that if you go to a concert and you see a cellist play this piece, with some big symphony orchestra, I promise you that more often than not, the conductor and the soloist will walk on stage, the soloist will sit down, and they will just start the piece, right? No waiting, nothing. Just, it deserves that kind of urgency, right? It's a very urgent opening. There's no waiting around for anything. You sit, one. Right? So try that one time. Let loose. Let your bow just create momentum for you. Let that breath before you start playing create momentum. And then let that descending figure kind of propel you forward without rushing, of course, but just let it kind of fall down. It's all like, music is like speech, right? Sorry I'm talking so much, but it's like natural. It wouldn't make sense, like, if I spoke like this, my words actually will not make as much sense to whoever's listening. There needs to be some kind of inflection. There needs to be, you can hear it, it's like goes up and then goes down, right? And that's just like the natural way for it to happen. And you were doing that. It's just you can always push yourself to do it more. Okay, I'm going to stop talking. And I want you to play the first page or so of this. Again, really forget that anybody's watching. Try to experience what this piece is about. That's half of what we do as performers. We try to think, what was the composer trying to say with this? And with this piece, it's obvious. It's just some sort of, intense emotion, whatever it is, and that's for you to decide. Try to experience that internally. Use your breath, use your motion, and just, push yourself to play it in a way that you didn't think you could. And don't worry about technique or intonation. You do that really well, okay? So just throw all of that out of the window, and I just want you to feel all that craziness. so much better. Really, I could hear so much more dynamics, first of all, and just so much more sort of rhythmic motion too. I will say that rhythmically, I think that you really need to hear each one of those downbeats that the orchestra plays. I'd almost say when you practice it, I want you to almost like stomp your foot or something, because it happens. Let's see, it happens in the first measure. Yum. It happens again, right? Yum. Because often it felt like when you were playing it just now, everything was really great. And then like that break between phrases, just like nothing happened in there, right? And then the phrase was really good again, but then again it's about feeling what is happening in that space. And that means, first of all, the rhythm will be more accurate because you were there was kind of an indefinite or unclear amount of time between the phrases. Right? As opposed to right? It comes pretty quick. Right? There's no right? You see that again, it's just making it, instead of it being kind of an abstract amount of time, making it a very clear 1, 2. If you don't feel the 1, there's no context for the 2 to come into, okay? So try it one more time, and whatever it is you do, you can feel it internally, you can stomp your foot, you can, scream yum, like that, like I'm doing. But I want you to really feel each one of those chords. Yum. 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 Dum bum bum. Right? So again, you're interacting with the orchestra. Even though there's no orchestra, you absolutely have to imagine the orchestra, okay? Try it one more time, and I want to not have any doubt myself as to, I want you to make me imagine the orchestra, okay? Whichever way, you don't have to scream, you don't have to, whatever it is, I'm going to feel it, even if you don't if you don't like say anything or do anything audible, I'm going to feel it if you feel it, I promise you. Great. Much, much better, okay? It still felt maybe at times, the 1 of the orchestra also comes out of your 4, if that makes sense. Da 4 1, right? So it's not like it's da da 4 1 tum ba da 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 dum. That was much better. You were actually, your 2 was going off of the 1, right? I hope that makes sense. Your 2 yum da 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 dum 1 2. That was happening, but the 1 also has to go off of the 4, the previous 4. 4 1 2. Does that make sense? The ya 1 2. It's a more kind of urgent. It'll first of all, it'll delineate that rhythm even better, and it will add even more urgency. Da 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 yon 2. It's really quick. There's no time to like think there. It's 4 1 2. See what I mean? Good. So, in this kind of opening, it's really important. to feel that rhythm, because without that rhythm, the piece has no meaning to it. That's the meaning. The meaning is 4, 1, 2. That's the meaning of the entire first movement. Okay, now when you get to the second movement, not the second movement, the second theme, in contrast, right? The second theme being right now, that is a whole different world. That's what's amazing about this piece, is that you started like this, and pretty much like, I don't know, 2 minutes later, you haven't even had much time to process all of that emotion. 2 minutes later, you're in a totally different place. The transition is really short. So that's just something to be aware of. Be aware that when you get to the second theme, you're in a different world. You're almost, it's like you're the same person, but you're experiencing a totally different emotion. Now, the second theme, it's really gorgeous, right? And that first interval, right? Can you tell me what interval that is, first of all? Just to sort of, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I do think for everybody it is important to, just have some conception of I don't know, the sort of structure of intervals and harmonies. Don't worry about it. It's a fifth, okay? So this descending fifth, right? What does it sound like to you? If you had to make an equivalent in like sounds that people make.
A sigh.
A sigh, exactly. Now, there are theories that Saint-Saëns got this theme from Schumann. Schumann, I'm sure a lot of you know, Schumann was married to Clara Schumann. Clara was sort of a heartthrob that also broke the heart of Brahms at the time. Anyway, Schumann was really in love with Clara, and in a lot of his music, there's this descending fifth that is kind of associated with this sigh of love. Clara. That's sort of the association in a lot of Schubert's music. That descending Schumann's music, that descending fifth is an interval of kind of longing and of love, and Saint-Saëns kind of adopted it in this piece. Now, what does it mean that it's a sigh in terms of how we play it? Like, what's the difference between the two notes?
The D is going to be more emphasized.
Right. So the G, that bottom note is a lot more, it sort of starts from out here and you kind of bring it in. That's sort of the dynamic of a sigh is, right? So, as opposed to, right, them being the same, right? All this talk about these dynamics has to do with, again, that kind of like the way we speak, something we're not consciously aware of, but we're constantly making those little dynamics when we talk. Otherwise, it just wouldn't be communicated as well, right? So that's just something, anything that you play has that shape that you have to discover, okay? And it's the kind of thing that the more you push yourself to express it and be really obvious about it, and because for the audience to perceive it, it needs to really happen in the sound, right? It's not something that you can think. It's something that you absolutely have to feel, and then feeling it will also make it happen physically on the instrument, right? It doesn't happen in kind of a mechanical way of like I'm decrescendoing, but if you feel it like a sigh, it will sound like a sigh, okay? So we have to move on, but one thing you can do in this whole, times of lockdown and whatever, when you can't play this with a pianist, I'm guessing, unless, there's a pianist around that you're able to play with, but in case there isn't, then anytime you play this opening, even if you practice it slowly, which you definitely should, right? Because everybody should practice everything slowly. Then even in a really slow tempo, check this out. 1. 4, 1, 2. You see, even in a slow tempo, the slower, the more important it is to feel, otherwise the rhythm becomes abstract. So really feel these rhythms, feel it again in your body. It's not something you can think, and express it with your breath and with the way you move. And then the gestures in the piece, which, that's basically what I've been talking about in the opening. It's that gesture. It's a rhythmic gesture. And then in the second theme, the melodic gesture, seeing that kind of totally different world, takes the same amount of belief. You have to be convicted in convicted. That doesn't sound right. Convinced, anyway, of that expression and how to. And then the playing of it, I promise you, will happen more naturally on its own. You won't have to think about it. You won't even have to sort of analyze and practice it. You'll just have to play it the way you feel it. All right. Thank you so much, Chloe. Yeah, great job. Keep working on it. Try to, again, everybody's right arm can always be just, I don't know, it's the breath. It's the breath to, like a singer. It's a singer uses breath to produce sound, and if you try to sing with, like, I don't know, not enough breath, basically, it's just not going to go anywhere. So this is for everybody. Use a lot of bow. Don't be afraid of using a lot of bow. Don't be afraid of if it sounds bad, because it's the kind of thing that you can't, you've got nothing to lose, first of all, and you miss all the shots that you don't shoot, and that just has to do, I'm not talking about, playing or not playing. I'm talking about if you're already playing, use the whole bow. You paid for the whole thing, right? Okay. Who's next?
Hello.
Hello. It's Young, correct?
Yes.
Hi, Young. How are you?
My name is Young. We're playing Rococo variation.
Cool.
The first theme and the first 3 variations.
Sounds good. Great. Thank you so much, Young. So obviously you play this piece really, really well, and you sound great. I want to ask you, how would you describe this piece? Like, well, what's its character? What's it about? What is it? What does it feel like?
I think this song has a lot of ideas in it. Like, it has a lot of different, I guess, tones to it.
Totally, totally. By nature of being a theme and variation, it kind of goes through a variety of different characters. How about just the theme, right? The theme is what everything is based off of, right? All of the other variations are all based around the theme. How would you describe the theme?
It's very, I guess, dance-like. Like it has a nice upbeat to it.
Okay, upbeat. I like that. What else? So it's you're kind of you're saying it's upbeat in terms like it's. I mean, it's not sad. It's not dark in any way. It's, if anything, it's kind of bright and light, right? Dance meaning kind of it's up. You know, it's not slow and kind of stagnant or stuck in any way. It's quite light and moving and you know, you could say it's happy, you could say it's you know, it's just lighthearted, and it's got not a worry in the world, at least the first theme, or the theme, I mean. You can probably say the same about the first variation, right? First variation is very much in the same feeling as the theme. Probably, if I remember correctly, the orchestra is doing very similar things in the first theme, and in the first variation as it is in the theme. Just kind of accompanying with like pizzicato, short notes, just keeping everything very much up, light, and, you know, there's no big, bombastic, intense, very different from the Saint-Saëns, for example, right? It's all about kind of light, cheery, just fun. Good. So, you know the meaning of Rococo? What does Rococo mean?
I do not know.
You do not know. That's absolutely all right, because that's why we're doing this. So, Rococo refers to a sort of style of music, right around between the Baroque and classical periods, sort of a transition style, harkening back to, let's say, you know, 1730 to 1750 or something like that. That had still the sort of ornamentation of Baroque, but was already geared towards sort of easy listening, court music, nice, pleasant, you know. You could almost equate it, you know, with sort of what it's like to listen to pop music. You know, obviously it's not the same style, but just in terms of like, it's not music that is, you know, makes you worry about anything. Now, this piece Tchaikovsky wrote sort of inspired by the music of Mozart. I'm sure you're familiar with the music of Mozart, right? What pieces do you know by Mozart? Have you played anything by Mozart?
Just orchestral stuff.
Just orchestra stuff?
Yeah,
Like what?
I do not remember.
That's all right. How would you describe that orchestra stuff?
Like light and bouncy.
Light and bouncy. Exactly. Now, I don't know how much you know about Mozart's life, but at that time, a successful composer like Mozart was writing for the court and the aristocracy and Vienna, basically writing beautiful, light-hearted music to entertain the the upper class. Meaning, by nature, a lot of his music, obviously not all of it, not like the Requiem, but a lot of his music, like if you listen to the string quartets, especially the ones that are in major keys, it's just beautiful melodies and really nice, just makes you feel good. And that's what this piece is about as well. At least the theme and the first two variations. We'll talk about the third variation in a sec. All that to say is, I think that because you play it so well, what you can make your first priority whenever you play this piece is not to play everything perfectly, but to absolutely embody the lightness and just fun of this piece. I thought that at least the theme and the first variation, they were both quite quick, and they were just you kind of barreled through them a little bit, sort of not giving them space to just, experience the beauty and the nice feelings of it. So, for example, you don't have to take my tempo. You can, again, I'm not telling you what you should do. I'm just giving you kind of pushing you to experience the character of the piece more, because a piece like this is so technical that we sometimes forget about the mood itself and the purpose of it. We often don't think about music as being theater, and obviously you're not acting in any way. But any piece you play has a character in the theatrical sense. If you ever go to a play, if you see, a Shakespeare play, you've got the really serious characters like King Lear, and the actors have to embody that character, right? They have to kind of think and feel as if they were that character. So if you're King Lear, you're going to be really serious and stern. And if you're the fool or the Joker character, you're going to be, nice, happy, and bubbly. So, piece like this. You're taking a nice, easy stroll through the beautiful gardens of Vienna, right? Everything, the sun is shining, the birds are chirping, and everything is wonderful. Maybe you're skipping a little quicker now, but it's still just sunny, fun times. So I want you to play the theme and the first variation, and I don't want you to worry about intonation or sound or anything besides, sound actually, yes, because what really embodies or creates that mood is the sound. So again, if I play it like this, right? It sounds kind of like that more than which is almost more like, right? It has more in common with that than with the synth sounds, even though they're both concertos. All right, so just try that. Really take care of the sort of the sound being very delicate. So, that was better. I still felt like it was a little bit just, it was a little bit almost like a march. Da da yum bum 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 dum 2 3 da yum dum da 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 dum. And I think that has to do with kind of your articulation. So for example, from the very first gesture, it's kind of angular use of the bow, as opposed to the D is on the downbeat, I don't need to use a lot of bow. I'm actually maybe telling you to use less bow here. But it's all about, again, think of the bow kind of petting the string as if it was a nice little kitten or something. And there's no accents in this beginning, right? It's like you're walking a little bit like this. I want you to walk just a little bit more casual, a little bit more just calm and sunny. I think you can probably slow it down a little bit. It's a little bit kind of always moving. And this opening is very much about actually just taking the time to look around. Try the theme one more time, slow it down, really feel the character embodied in the way you use the bow. So, de-do-dum, as opposed to ya-do-yum, da-do. It's softer, less accent, everything easy, and just happy. One more time. Good, Young. So again, this tempo, it's all up to you, but I want you to try it one time. Just slow it down. Take it as far to that extreme as you can. Just kind of think about what it feels like to sit in the sun reading a book and just kind of enjoying life. And really make sure you don't those notes feel very kind of angular. Try to sing them more. Okay? So do that one more time. Slow it down. Really consciously slow it down. Really just make everything a lot more relaxed. Good, Young, you're still that first downbeat still has a lot of kind of horizontal energy to it. I know it's probably how you've been playing it so far, but it's really important that you're able to play differently from what you're used to. So it may be already kind of ingrained in your hands that it feels like that. I want you to try. So no accent whatsoever. You're still, I'm gonna be tough on you here because you're still doing it, and I think it's just because that's how you're used to, and it's really important that you don't play things because of how you're used to, but because that's how you really believe they should be, and I think that'll propel your playing very far. Do one more time, dee-da-yum, and just curb that impulse to ya-da-yum, accent that note. Yes! Much better. It was especially that one time where you really did not accent that downbeat. That was super nice. I still think you should experiment, even just for the sake of practice, playing it in a slower tempo, because so far you've played the exact same tempo every single time. And again, it's just important to be able to play it in a variety of different ways so that you can play it the way you have been, which is totally viable, by the way. There's nothing wrong with it. I'm just offering a different way of playing it, and it's important to be able to play it in a different way. Do it one more time and really make an effort to slow it down, relax it. Sorry, Young. That is, to my ears, feels a lot more like the theme of Rococo Variations. It's got more of sort of this good-natured feeling to it. And it's less just kind of like, this is the theme. What was I going to say? Oh, just be aware that you very much, I think, out of habit, accent that first downbeat. Did-yum. So just be aware of that. Try to find different ways of playing it. Did-yum. Yada-yum. It really does. It's not a note that has any significant importance or meaning or anything. It's just another step along the road. You know what I mean? It's a very easygoing thing. Try playing the first variation now. Try keeping that same tempo. You played it really very quickly, which is very impressive technically. But you just don't have as much time to appreciate the beautiful flowers and the birds chirping. You know, it just kind of, you take a couple steps and you're at the end of the road already. So just slow it down. And again, even though it's difficult, just try to enjoy all those intervals. Like, for example, one of the hardest parts. Like, sorry, that was really out of tune, but you want to give that time to experience that. It can't just be, right? It's not an etude. It's not like it's not about how fast you can play it. It's about walking the audience through that experience. So try that first variation. Great. Now obviously you don't have to play it in that tempo. You pick the tempo that you like best. It could be faster, could be slower. It really doesn't matter. It's all about what for you feels most right for that feeling that we're trying to get. Just this nice, it's just, we're having a great time. This piece is having a great time. And it's all about light brilliance. It's not sort of in-your-face virtuosity. So the next variation right, even though it's fast, it's all about lightness. It actually the only purpose of it is lightness. Playing it fast and playing it accurately doesn't matter if it's not light. If it's heavy in any way, it's just not going to sound as flashy or virtuosic at all. It's actually just going to sound kind of heavy and stodgy. Try playing it, and just everything about it needs to be up. Up, up, light. So, sorry, just to stop you right there. If you sustain those 3 notes, that's down. That's the opposite of light. So, you're floating away. Okay, so even that is really it's nothing. It's air. Okay. So don't worry about each note being like being like played well. Good, good, good. One thing I can say for sure is that that last note can't be accented, right? It's all about the release of it. So just work on that. The scales up, I think you can use way less bow and play closer to the fingerboard. Just, you know, throw it away. Even if it sounds kind of sloppy, it doesn't matter. Right? It's all about how light and airy it can be. So you're you're using a lot of bow, and that itself slows you down and just makes it heavier like that. Okay? Now, before we have to stop, the third variation. It's the first variation that's a bit of a departure from all of this that I've been talking about, right? Now, my take on the third variation is that all of a sudden, you know, after walking and skipping and running, even, you know, through the road and sort of all of that, all of a sudden, either you see your crush or something, or you just, you know, remember something that was really meaningful to you. And all of a sudden now you have a song, a real song, you know, not just like flurries and fun, but a song, if it's about love or if it's about nostalgia or all of those things. You know, also kind of like how in the Sansons, when you get to the second theme, it's a totally different world. So this is also a totally different world. So, it's so, you know, we spend so much time honing the craft, which is obviously really important. We can't do without it. We can't play if we don't know how to play. And everybody who played for me today plays really well. And, you know, most of what I've talked about is how to, first of all, how to just free up the bow and the expression, and, you know, move with the music so that we can feel it better. And also just think about what is the meaning of the music, right? And how do I make that happen when I play it? Because you can play something, you know, it's like you can read aloud a Shakespeare sonnet And even though the words are beautiful, even though the notes are beautiful, you can read it in a way where it has no meaning, and it like is first of all difficult to understand, and also just won't make you feel as much. So it's our job as musicians, before we even start practicing something, you just want to think, what is the purpose of it, and how are we going to make it express what we feel? So anyway, with that, I think it's probably time to wrap up. I want to thank everybody who played today. Really, you're all very very talented, and it's very inspiring for me to see the work you put in, and I urge you to keep at it, because at the end of the day, you know, we do it because it brings us joy and brings the people around us joy. So again, it's also just about imbuing that with all these pieces, just really making it as meaningful as it can be.
Beautiful. Well, I'd like to thank Daniel for doing the class today. Daniel, do you have a couple minutes to spare for a Q&A, or you got to run?
Sure thing. That's fine.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to unmute everyone's microphones. So if you do not want it to be unmuted, I would recommend you go back and mute yourselves. But I'll click that now, and if anybody has a question, you can jump right in and ask away. So give me 1 second here. And everyone now is unmuted. So if any questions, just jump in and we'll go from there. No takers? Wow, it was a silent bunch today.
Let me ask you a question. Is everybody here cellists?
Looking at the list, I recognize the majority of the musicians is mostly cello players. I see a couple bass players.
Nice. You know, my dad's a bass player, so we actually have a double bass upstairs, which I very much enjoy plucking at sometimes. So.
But you don't actually play the bass, do you?
Well, I mean, you know, who's to say if it's playing or not, right? But
what does that mean?
I know. Well, I mean, you know, what do you mean I don't play the bass? I you know, if I play the bass, I'm playing it.
No, but can you play it? Do you feel comfortable on the bass?
Yeah, I mean,
I wouldn't feel comfortable on the bass.
Right. Well, you know, coming from cello, it's definitely not a huge leap to make. So, I would say yes.
Okay. So we have no questions, no takers. I mean, there's still. 1 second, somebody just messaged me here. There's still a lot of people in the room, so I'm assuming they're either sticking around to just stare at the screen, or if no one has any questions. Any of the participants have anything else?
I have a question. You can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay. What was like the first time you performed a concerto with an orchestra? Like, I'm assuming you have. First of all, yeah. Can you what was the experience like? Because I know for someone I know, it's hasn't always been the best experience, but I don't know, what playing with an orchestra and getting a concerto together with that, does it take a toll on your expression?
Well, that's a really good question. I mean, firstly, I'd say that, you know, nothing can be the reason or take a toll on your expression if you're expressing yourself. You know, even if you're playing with an orchestra, it's actually your job to inspire the orchestra, you know, and you can't sort of expect the orchestra to, you know, I don't know, you can't expect, you know, 50 or 100 people to play exactly the way you want it to be. But that's the collaboration. I will say that, you know, obviously it's easier to play with piano. That's just, you know, because you're only playing with one person. You only have to communicate with one person. The difficulty in playing with an orchestra is you have to communicate. You have to lead and and sort of show and direct, you know, a bunch of people. Um, and you know, you communicate with the conductor, and but you also communicate with the orchestra directly as a soloist. You know, everything you do, the way you move and the way you play, the orchestra responds to it. And it's only difficult to play with an orchestra if they don't know what you're doing. You know what I mean? If you're not clear, they're gonna not know how to follow you, and so then you might think that, oh, they're not following me. But you know, most of the time it's actually your fault. I'm sure, Junior, you're very glad I said that, because you know it's never your fault.
Actually, I'm one of the few people who owns up to their mistakes.
Yeah, yeah. No, I appreciate that. But you know, also at the same time, I'd say that playing with an orchestra is just one of the greatest experiences. You know, next to playing with the piano, when you play with an orchestra, it just comes to life. You are sitting in the middle of a huge amount of sound, and it's, you know, it's really incredible. So
Can I add a little bit to Angel's question here? Um, at least give you my perspective of it. Um, the funny thing is, sort of what Daniel touched on my point of view, it makes a difference working with someone who's pretty much easy to work with. Okay, Daniel's one of the most chilled, laid back people I know, and when I've worked with him in the past, I think even when he was like a student, I think, like I said earlier, we met him when you were 13 or something. So the whole all this time that I've known him, he's been very easy to work with. He's always prepared, obviously. He's never demanding, and you get people who are, and to be honest, it sort of makes things worse sometimes. You know, especially if you're like, if you have a youth orchestra is one thing, if you have an amateur orchestra is another thing, like a community orchestra, and even some professional orchestras, if they're not capable of delivering what you want, it's basically up to you and your personality and your demeanor to handle the situation and sort of understand that it's not going to go how you thought it might or how it should, and it's just you got to make the best of the situation. And
mm,
unfortunately, you know, there are instances, at least that I've dealt with, where some people don't get that. You know, I've done concerts with orchestras that weren't the greatest. You know, it's like a they weren't the strongest players. They mostly played just for the love of music, and the soloist thought it was the Berlin Philharmonic or something. Like they wanted them to sound like it was the London Symphony or the Berlin Phil or something like that, and that just doesn't always happen. And so how you approach the situation also will make a big difference, and it will impact the whole presentation. So anyway,
Mm.
we had a question from Chloe Kim. Let me see. There she is. I just unmuted her. She unmuted
Hi,
her.
sorry. Um, I was wondering if you could tell your younger self a piece of advice, what would it be?
um, wow, that's deep. I would
Mm.
tell my younger self to, first of all, enjoy it as much as you know, enjoy playing music, because I don't know, at least for myself, I was definitely for a while, I had to be, it had to be perfect and it had to be really cool. And actually that took a toll on my playing. Um, and not only kind of made me express things less, um, but actually just made me more tense. And so actually in like a technical way even, it just kind of came in the way. And it's the kind of thing where often we think of technique and musicality as being separate. But really, the more you express, there's a great quote from Gregor Piatigorsky, who was a very, very well-known sort of one of the forefathers of modern cello playing. He, had a really kind of rough life in Russia, and then he came to L.A. and anyway, was a very amazing musician. And he said that, I think somebody asked him, like, what do you do when you get to a really difficult passage? And he said, when it gets difficult, I express even more. I feel even more, and I put even more feeling into what I'm playing. Because the truth is that if you are kind of in the music and you're really feeling it and you're kind of moving with your body according to it, then the technical things actually kind of figure themselves out. The more consciously you try to, like, if you try to do a shift and you're like, like, I've got to get from here to there, chances are you're not going to make it. And that's something that took me a while to understand. So
Thank you.
I have a question.
yes.
What does your practice routine mainly consist of, or what do you do to warm up, things like that?
Well, first of all, doing slow scales, for me, it's really important to get my vibrato going. Something that I think everybody can benefit from. The thing about vibrato is, we kind of think of like, you play, you know how to play the instrument, and then you add vibrato to it. But in reality, for example, singers, you've heard like trained singers, they're vibrating always, right? That's not something that they're like actively like adding on top of their sound. That's actually a natural thing with proper vocal technique. And sort of proper vocal technique means everything is relaxed. That's the thing. Technique actually means relaxed. Relaxed as in like, it's doing what it needs to do, but it's efficient and nothing is overworking and nothing is getting in the way. You can think of tension as kind of getting in the way of the flow. So the flow of air, if anything gets in the way of flow of air, if the technique is proper and the flow of air isn't stopped in any way, the larynx naturally vibrates, and that is actually a natural reaction. So I think similarly for us, if you're vibrating in a loose way and it sounds good, the vibrato sounds good, that actually means that your palm and your wrist and everything is relaxed, which means that you are actually using proper technique. So vibrato is not something you add. Vibrato is the sort of natural byproduct of proper technique. Obviously, you can play without vibrating, and it's not like everything needs to be vibrated. And there is like various degrees of vibrato at all times. It's not anything that stays flat. It's always fluctuating, just like the bow. So for me, it's actually, I always start by just kind of loosening up of the vibrato, because sometimes, if you wake up, and you start practicing, your joints are a little bit stiff. So you just, it's all about loosening things up and getting the breath involved and all of that. And obviously, that's just in like, if you're doing a scale, it doesn't, that's the thing. It for me, it doesn't as much matter like exactly the method in which you play scales. Obviously, playing scales is good. Playing arpeggios is good. double stops are really, really good for you, especially if everything, you always make sure whatever double stop you're playing, if it's a sixth or a octave or all those things, it's always about it being loose inside, you know. Um, Double stop scales are really good, you know, and there's many books you can get with specific fingerings and stuff like that. So, you know, just pick one and just, you know, try it, but really having in mind the purpose of making sure everything is supple and has flow, kind of flow of blood to the hands and stuff like that. Um, Intervals are great, and then, you know, you have your etudes, which are always good to do, but it's all about staying loose. You know, like I quoted Janos Starker. That's really something I live by, which is like, there's no point in practicing if you're not also always making sure you're loose. It's also just healthier for you, right? Because it's so easy to get kind of, you know, your shoulder. That's how we get all these problems if we forget to kind of keep everything flowing, and even if it's a big sound, there needs to be flow through your hands. So yeah. And also making sure you're not, for example, with the left hand, you're not pressing harder than you need to. Also, really big thing for technique is I always find that the first culprit of tension is the thumbs in both hands, the thumb here and the thumb here. So everybody be aware of their thumbs, and just that the thumbs aren't working too hard. This muscle right here is connected to your entire body. So if this muscle is tense, then, you know, I promise you a lot of other things are going to tense up.
Good. So, if no one has any other question,
I have one more question.
Sure.
So my question is there like a certain musician or any cellist that inspires your playing?
Sure. There's a lot of musicians that inspire my playing. I would say one that's been a big one for me in terms of cellists is Rostropovich. He's also one of those kind of, you know, the older generation kind of guys like Piatigorsky, and he just, you can tell that he doesn't stop himself from expressing anything, even if it's out of tune, which it often is, or if like the bow changes are messy. It just doesn't matter. You know, obviously, like, you know, it does matter to an extent, and like, he was a good player. He was a really good player. But the main thing about him is his sound and his personality. So like, that's, you know, there's a lot of great players out there, but the thing that draws us to the ones that really mean a lot for us is their personality, you know, because that's really what comes across in the music.
oh, say it again. If no one has any other question, it's funny because at the
There's one over
beginning
there.
when I actually asked, no one was speaking, and then
I
all
think
of a sudden,
Emma has a question.
someone has a question.
Okay. So I was wondering how exactly you can train your thumbs to be less tense, because that's a big problem with me, and it affects like a lot of my playing. Like, how do you loosen up in your thumbs?
You know, it's a lifelong journey, but I mean, generally, I would say with the bow, you want to make sure that it's like very much the tip of your thumb, so that that's sort of engaging with the bow, so that you have that nice curve. You know, again, if you think about this shape, the curve, as opposed to kind of a straight line like this already tightens the bow immediately. So keeping this curve, you know, all my teachers always talked about, it's almost like you're holding a tennis ball or something, there's all this space. You want to keep space in your palm, right? As opposed to anything being cramped up, right? So keeping space and keeping kind of curved shapes in both thumbs. The left thumb can also kind of cramp in. That's really important. And then it's also about keeping your wrists loose, because if your wrists are sort of stuck, then your thumb is stuck. But I mean, it's just about trying different stuff out. I would say with the left hand specifically, if you think about pulling the string down by kind of hanging on the string as opposed to pinching, right? You can push the string down like this, or you can push the string down by kind of hanging off of it, which then you don't need the thumb for anything. You just kind of use your arm weight to pull the string down. So, hope that helps.
Yes, thank you.
Sure.
So Daniel, it was good seeing you again.
Yeah, man.
You'll have to come visit again, and we'll
For
talk
sure.
about it.
Super.
Yeah, great class. I wish I would have heard you play some more, but I'm sure we'll make that happen sooner than later. So again, thanks to Daniel for doing the class for us, and thank you for everybody who played and everybody who attended. We had a really nice crowd, really nice turnout. So keep safe, stay healthy, keep practicing, and if you're interested in other classes or things that we're doing, check out the lvyao.org/VI2020, and those are all the programs we're doing in May for the virtual initiative. On Friday, I'm going to be hosting an alumni talk, just catching up with alumni from the program, see where they're at, what they're doing, how college life is. Some of them are out of college and now working professionally. I want to catch up with them as well. So if you want to tune into that, you can check it out and see how people are doing. Some might be doing music, some might not. I actually have no idea. I mean, I keep in touch with most alumni, but there's some that disappear. They go to another country or who knows, and you don't hear from them for a while. So I invite you all to attend that on Friday. Again, let's thank Daniel, and we'll catch you at the next masterclass. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Junior, and thanks, everybody. Right. Bye-bye.